This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to tonight's Storyworks Roundtable. Kathryn and I are thrilled to have the best-selling mystery author Sara Rosett with us today. Sara writes the Ellie Avery series, the On the Run series, and the Murder on Location series. Publishers Weekly called Sara's books satisfying, well-executed, and sparkling. Sara teaches what she knows through the How to Outline a Cozy Mystery course. She loves to get new stamps in her passport and considers dark chocolate a daily requirement. Ooh, me too. Yeah. You can find Sara at sararosett.com. That's Sara, S-A-R-A, and Rosett, R-O-S-E-T-T. And if you join her email list, you get a free ebook. So welcome, Sara.
Welcome. Hi, thanks for having me. Hello.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here. So tonight we are starting a two-part series on the mystery genre, and there's going to be a companion episode. Tonight we're talking characters. In the companion episode, we're going to talk plot. So Sara, you've got 3 series out there, and between them, currently you have 16 books, right? That's fantastic.
Impressive.
Yes, very impressive. Can you give us a quick description of the 3 series?
Sure. The first series I wrote was the Ellie Avery series, and it's a cozy mystery. And it's about a mom who's a military spouse who moves around the country and finds murder and mayhem wherever she goes. The second series I wrote is called On the Run, and it was a complete departure. It's like a little mystery, a little romance, a little travel, not quite a cozy mystery. It's almost a throwback to the classic romantic suspense of like Mary Stuart and Elizabeth Peters, if you're familiar with those. And then the third series I write is another cozy series set in England, and it's called Murder on Location.
Very cool. So, okay. 2 cozy, 1 not so
kind
cozy.
Of like,
yeah,
doesn't fit in any genre easily. So, but I have a lot of fun writing it. I enjoy it.
Definitely. Well, mysteries are fun to write. They're really, yeah. Okay. Let's move into character. So there are certain types or archetypes of characters that are essential to mysteries, and shades of each archetype populate all the different subgenres in the mystery. Why don't we start with the detective? I think every mystery needs a detective, and talk about what makes a good protagonist within a mystery. What do you think, Sara? What makes a good detective?
Well, I think you need someone who's curious, especially, I tend to write cozy, so you don't have an excuse to, you have to come up with a reason for them to be involved in the mystery. So sometimes they need to be a little curious / nosy. And
right.
I think it helps if you're writing an amateur sleuth to have them have something that gets them involved with lots of different people and gives them lots of reasons to meet different people. If you're writing a straight police procedural or something like that, it's a little different. But I think you need, kind of the big, broad curiosity, interested in people in the world. And then, you need something that makes them themselves interesting. So
right.
Like my Murder on Location series, that main character is a location scout. And I read an article about a location scout, and I thought, oh, this is so interesting. I knew nothing about it, so I researched it. And so to me, that makes her interesting, and maybe somebody who doesn't know what that's about would go, oh, I'll read this book and find out kind of what that profession is like.
Right. That's cool. So you have a location scout. What are let's do for instances here. So what are your other 2 series? What are those protagonists?
Well, the Ellie Avery series, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's got a part-time organizing business, and she's a military spouse. And that series has gone on for like 10 books. And because she has all these different facets to her personality and her character, I can kind of explore different things as the series goes on. So like some books focus more on like the parenting, the mom part, like the last one was all about the end of the year, being involved in school parties and stuff. There's a mystery of the school. Others have focused on like the squadron, moving, her professional organizing business, some of those things. The Zoe series, the On the Run series, is I wanted to write my other two characters are very kind of orderly, especially Ellie. She's an organizer, and very restrained. And so I wanted to write somebody totally different, somebody who was impulsive. And so I just came up with this character that she just lived paycheck to paycheck and did freelance jobs. And so I could have her do anything, so that was a lot of fun.
Right. That's great. Now, what about the special skills they need to become detectives besides being curious? In the Skog Hall series, what makes Jess special, that special qualification is that she develops a psychic ability when she moves into a haunted house. And then in the second book, the local sheriff uses her to help him solve a crime. And now that sets us up to have the sheriff's department kind of keep engaging her because of her special ability. So what kind of sucks the protagonist into crime after crime? What keeps them coming back besides?
There has to be a willing suspension of disbelief in these books, because it would not happen over and over again. But I think that the readers enjoy the characters in the world, and so they want to go back to it. So, but I think that like a lot of times what I use is the character's kind of inside knowledge of the world she inhabits gives her kind of an edge, whereas like an investigation that centers around like a military base or a squadron, they're not going to know like all the ins and outs and all the gossip and everything that's going on, whereas my character would. In the Murder on Location series, it's more that she can kind of go different places and see different things and kind of drop in, and she's an outsider, so that gives her a different perspective. I was a military spouse, and we've moved a lot, and so I noticed things like we'll move to a new town, and I noticed things that people who've lived there for years don't notice. So I kind of try to apply that to her.
Right. That's really cool. So the insider and the outsider perspectives are so useful for that protagonist, and we've talked about this on the roundtable before when we've discussed character development, that when the outsider perspective as a newcomer, a stranger in a strange land, can be really useful for introducing things. And then the insiders, you're working with both of those from your life experience.
Yeah, just kind of strange how twisted.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite perspective with the characters? That insider-outsider thing, is one easier to work with or easier to develop into these mysteries?
I know that the Ellie series is easy to write now, and it may just be because I've written it longer, and I feel like I know her and those characters better. But like whatever I'm working on, I get into it, and it's not whatever I'm working on is my favorite at that time. So.
Yeah. Have you had to develop new skills yourself in order to bring them to the characters?
Well, I've done some interesting things. I mean, I'm not very adventurous, but when I was starting to write the Zoe books, I was like, okay, I need to do some of these things so I can write about them. So like we went rock climbing, my family, we went just like to an indoor rock climbing thing, but I don't love heights, but I did it. And so I put that one in the books, and we've been to a firing range and tried out guns and stuff, so it's like things that I wouldn't normally say, oh, I think I'll go to a firing range today, but I think, okay, I can use this in my writing and it'll give me like a firsthand experience. So.
Yes, I did the shooting range last year because Jess had to fire a gun. So Alida had to fire a gun. Yeah. Cool. Any other qualities either of you can think of that are essential for a detective besides curiosity, picking up some of these skills that they need along the way, whether it's, procedural skills or weaponry or tracking down clues? What else goes into a good detective?
I think being observant, that's especially in the traditional mystery. It's the tiniest little detail that can, make or break somebody's case, if you will. So, you have to be able to see those tiny details.
Right. And I think I haven't read extensively in the mysteries genre, but it seems to me like they always have a distrust of the authority figure or whoever is doing the investigation. They don't tend to share information back and forth, or at least it doesn't seem like that. If there's a crime involved, like they have more inclination to do it on their own rather than to report whatever they're finding to the police or to interact with that authority figure if they're not already a part of that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's an interesting
like an independent
observation.
streak or I don't know what you would call that.
Yeah. Right. Well, from a craft perspective, I would call it keeping your protagonist active, because if you are finding a clue and handing it over to somebody else, then your protagonist loses some of that agency that you need to get you through to the climax and to keep that protagonist and therefore the reader actively engaged with the villain of the piece. So
yeah, you have to set it up so that there's a way that your character is almost forced to continue to pursue the clues, because most people, they would not be doing that. So you have to figure out some reason. Either they're a consultant, like them with a professional job, or they've got something at stake that, they don't trust the outcome, of the police or the investigation.
Right. And having that thing at stake is critical to any story, no matter what genre you're in. And if it is your protagonist's job, because your protagonist is a cop or a hired PI or something, then that's kind of a built-in motivation to keep the protagonist engaged with the crime as the stakes keep going up. But when you've got an amateur sleuth like we do, then you have to keep figuring out what keeps this person from giving up on this case, what keeps her in the game when things are getting harder and more dangerous, maybe more violent, depending on your subgenre. One of your detectives is an at-home mom, so, children could be threatened at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you keep upping the stakes and keep your protagonist engaged over a whole series of 10 books or more and keep that fresh?
Well, I think it's helped that I've kind of been able to rotate through different kind of scenarios. And so sometimes, like the ones with the squadron, it's something to do with her husband that's, she's like compelled to keep poking around until she finds out what's going on. The one that I just did with the kids at the school is like doesn't feel comfortable just dropping them off and driving away. Like, right, kids, you'll be fine. So, you've got to give her a reason to continue to be involved. And, sometimes the threat is to the character themselves, like somebody's implicated them or it looks bad. She's a professional organizer, and I've used the excuse that, your business is going to dry up if everybody thinks you're a killer, So you have to clear your name. So
definitely.
There's some different things I've done.
Cool. What other kinds of characters are mandatory in mysteries, would you guys say?
Well, I think in my genre, you almost always have to have a sidekick. You need somebody to bounce ideas off of, and it helps. So your main character isn't just thinking about everything all the time. Right. And in the cozy mystery world, you can have animal sidekicks, which I've never done, but that is a whole subgenre of itself. And usually it's a best friend, that goes from book to book. And some people get more involved in the sidekicks storyline, or as involved as the main character storyline. So that's one.
Right. Sidekicks are definitely useful, because if you are missing that piece, then the protagonist doesn't have anyone as you said, to bounce ideas off of and to keep giving the reader pertinent information, but in an active and engaging way, and also to kind of process some of the twists and turns of the mystery that you need to get out at a certain point, to keep us moving up to the climax. That's good. Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that, oh yeah, Jess doesn't have a sidekick, but it'll be interesting to see where that goes in the series, if she ends up needing one or not, Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes my stories have had like a best friend. Sometimes like that was kind of in the beginning, and then later on in the stories involving the squadron, her husband kind of becomes the sidekick, which was interesting because he never really was real happy with her sleuthing. But then when it was him involved, it was different, So that was kind of fun. So I don't think you have to have the same person every time.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
You also need a detective. And whenever I'm planning out my stories, I plan out, the characters and the suspects and the murderer and all the false trails.
Right.
And I never think about the detective. And there's got to be somebody who's got to investigate the crime.
Right. So other than the amateur sleuth, somebody who's a law enforcement officer.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And so I'll be riding along and I'll think, oh, I don't even know his name or her name, not have to come up with a character. So that's something that I probably because of the type of story I write.
Yes. When I was writing the first Scott Call, I set out to do a minimum amount of research because I'd been writing historical novels for years, which is all about research. So I was just having a lot of fun. Like it's set in a town an hour and a half away from me that I'm familiar with. Jess's my main character is based on me just as a starting off point, and she's totally different. Not me. But, I was like, I'm just going to take stuff I know and stuff I like, and then I don't have to research. And I was so clever, and the mystery was a 40-year-old murder in her haunted house. So all the research was like, 40 years old. And then I got to book 2, and I'm like, okay, I need a sheriff's office consultant. I need to understand forensics. I need to understand crime scenes. So there went my light research.
your easy path, huh?
Yes. Yep. That was out the window as soon as I got to book 2. I was like, yep. Okay. But it's fun. Yeah.
You couldn't just keep her solving cold cases and things that were 40 years old?
I don't think that would have worked so well. Maybe, but no. No, not this character. Maybe down the road. I don't know. We'll go into more paranormal stuff and kind of mix up the murders with the paranormal. So who knows?
So I noticed, so I was reading Elusive. I noticed that you wrote a lot of these secondary characters also had point of views. Do you often write multiple point of views from your different side characters that come in and out?
No, my cozies are all first person.
Okay.
And so Elusive was the first book I'd written that had multiple points of view. And it was so freeing because as a first person narrative in a cozy, you have to figure out how your character is going to find out all these other things. And when I wrote Elusive, I was like, oh my goodness, I can use this other character to describe this whole scene, and she doesn't even have to be there, but she can find out about it later. So yeah, that was, I like doing both kinds. I like doing the first person and the different points of view, but I think first person is challenging in a way with a mystery because it's hard to get all of the details that you need to your sleuth to find out first person. I think it's easier if you have multiple points of view to get across your clues and your red herrings.
Definitely easier. So my first inclination is to say which one is better, but that's not the right question because both have pros and cons. So what have you discovered are kind of the fun pieces of one and the challenges, and how would you weigh those against each other?
Well, the multiple points of view I think are fun because you can really show different things easily. I mean, you're like, you need to drop this clue and this other person can find it, and the knowledge comes out to the reader. And as easier, I think, maybe in plotting in a way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little more work because you have to, you know, flesh out those characters enough to speak through them. But do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But,
yeah. So easier in terms of plot and showing the reader what you want to show the reader at any given moment, but much harder in terms of character development, because now you've got to make distinct voices for each point of view character and give them all maybe not as much backstory or development as the protagonist, but enough to really bring them to life for the reader. So definitely more work on that on that end.
Yeah.
Reasons to care about the mystery and what's going on.
Yes, more people to get involved and work into the plot. But first person, I think, is fun because you can really get to know the person really well. And like after you've written several books, it's fun to explore, just to continue to explore that point of view. And, you know, third person is fun because you can have one person have their point of view of a scene and then another person, you can see their point of view and it might be totally different. And then your reader's got to figure out where the truth is, you know, between that. So that can be fun too.
Definitely. Now with your first person protagonist, do you give them a character arc over the whole series so that the reader should read the book sequentially and see their lives change and the characters grow? Or is it more like a Sherlock Holmes where it's more episodic and the place and the, you know, the surroundings don't change that much?
I try and give them a small series arc. I mean, when I first started out, I really didn't think that far ahead. I wasn't sure, you know, that the series would continue, especially with the Ellie books. I was like, you know, I got one written. I was so happy. But Ellie's like an every woman. She's like a normal person. And so like coming up with huge dramatic character arcs for her, I just didn't feel comfortable writing that. So like her character arcs are smaller things like, you know, her kids transition from, you know, preschool to school, you know, or challenges with moving and things like that. Hers are more external, but things do change in the characters, all the characters' lives as time goes by. So, you know, like her best friend starts out in the series with no kids, and then, you know, a couple books in, she has a baby and her life changes, you know, so it's more like slice of life kind of changes.
Right.
But it's not, you can pick it up and read book 5 before you read book 1.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, some readers like just the drop in anywhere in the series. Kind of like to have a little arc.
Right. Would you say that the non-sequential series are more of a cozy thing? Or do you think, is it part of a subgenre of reader expectation or not so much?
No, I don't think so much anymore. I think more like the classic mysteries like Agatha Christie. You know, like you can read pretty much any Miss Marple and she's pretty much the same, you know.
She doesn't really change.
She doesn't really change that much. Or Perot is kind of the same way. So I think that's more, I think readers now want some character development, I think. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I agree. I think it's fun to see the changes. I mean, I don't think they're going to be dramatic changes, and I kind of like that because you can kind of just say, oh, it's the same character that I've fallen in love with, but the little changes do add up over time. So then by book 10, she's definitely not the same person she was in book 1, but you're not going to necessarily be like, this was a master plan. I don't
mine's never a master plan.
Yeah, I think both are fun, but personally, as a writer, Jess is going to have a series arc, but I don't know how long the series will end up being, you know? So I know however many books it is, each book really kind of needs to be read sequentially to see how she changes, because the mystery is wrapped up. That's contained within a book. So each of those you could drop in and read, but then in terms of her as a person, her relationships, the people in the village surrounding her, that changes. And that's where I place the hooks between books, you know? So if that open-ended question at the end of one book has to do with the subplots and the characters, So it's not that someone couldn't read them out of sequence, but I'm really designing them to be connected in a meaningful way, you know, in terms of what's going on with Jess. Like in book 2, she's kidnapped and lightly tortured. Mine are not cozy mysteries.
Not a cozy, huh?
No. So in book 3, she's got some kind of PTSD issues from that. So, you know, the sequential thing comes into play, and that might be a factor of dealing with darker subject matter as well, because there are going to be these ripple effects throughout her life that I wouldn't necessarily worry about if the mystery were something, or the subplots were something she could just sort of set down and go on with her life, you know?
Yeah. I've noticed that sometimes the books that have like a darker tone to them, and maybe the issues that the characters are dealing with are a little darker. Some of those, the subplots are a little more prominent, and they do need to be read in order because it wouldn't make sense otherwise.
Yeah. Well, should we talk a little bit about other types of characters, other archetypes? We mentioned red herrings, or you mentioned them, Sarah, when you were kind of listing off people you need in your multiple point of view stories, but the suspects, the red herrings, obviously we need a victim, we need a antagonist, a killer. Just thoughts on any other types of characters we need in mysteries, and maybe what you like about them, how you develop them, things you've noticed.
Well, when I write my books, I tend to think of like a kind of a closed community somehow. That my cozy mysteries, I think of like, okay, this is what this book is going to kind of be about. And so that pool of people, whether it's like the school, the squadron, her neighborhood. I've read books where it's like an apartment complex, like one building, you know, things like that, where it's like limited. It's okay, from these people, I'm going to figure out, you know, who the victim is, who the murderer is, and who the suspects are, and kind of work backwards from there, kind of reverse engineer, you know, how she'll get involved and what will happen. And it takes a lot of interlacing of relationships.
Yeah, it does. Now, when you're writing a series with a closed community and you've got 10 books or something, you're going to have to keep changing up that community from book to book. So do your characters, I know you've got one who's a location scout, so that's easy to put her in a different community every time. Now, Ellie is the military wife?
Yes.
Okay. So are you moving her a lot? Does the family move a lot? Do you have people passing through town? How do you figure that one out?
That was my original plan, was that she would move around the country and I would get to write about all the different places I'd lived, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And so I started out, and we had, I think, Washington State, and then she had a trip to Washington, D.C., which I got to do and wrote about that. And then she moved to Georgia, which, surprise, surprise, we'd actually lived in Georgia. So I was writing about that, and this is the series that's traditionally published, and the publisher loved the Southern setting. They like, oh, this does so well. Southern mysteries sell, so let's keep her in Georgia. And I was like, okay, that wasn't really
there
my
goes
plan.
Your premise.
So I just really got in depth and just explored different parts of that community where she lives. You know, so like some of the mysteries take place in her neighborhood, which is not on base. And then other stories do take place on base. So I wrote a Christmas story that was more centered around like a food bank and kind of like the Christmas play that her kids were involved in. So, you know, I think I still like the idea of moving a character from place to place and exploring different aspects of that. But then you do have the challenge of people come to read a cozy or even just a mystery series because they like the main character and the surrounding characters. And if you're going to a new place every time, you're starting over every time with all your supporting cast.
Right. And it's harder to move the sidekicks or the,
Yes.
whoever they have a relationship with on the police force or whatever, because those
Mm-hmm.
factors are going to change as well,
Yeah.
along with the location.
Yeah. So I can kind of see now why they wanted me to keep her in one place.
Mm-hmm.
But I still like the idea of moving around.
Yeah.
So did you solve that with the Mysteries on Location one by making her that location scout? She brings a whole team with her, so her sidekick goes with her? Is that kind of the whole... Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like they're all this little tribe, and that one, several of the mysteries take place kind of in the same village because I really liked writing about it, but she has gone on trips to other places, and in the future she'll go to new cities, so yeah. So nice. I think that one's worked out well. It's a nice balance.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you create a crime with, I assume, a killer around a children's Christmas pageant?
Well,
who's the bad guy in that?
I can't give it away.
Oh, well, no, I don't know. So we don't mind spoilers on the show because I figure it's all writers listening. But if you want to...
Now, I have a tendency to do like there will be the murder in the mystery, but the actual murder itself and like the crime is off stage usually. Mm-hmm. And even the one like about the school, there is a death and it's someone related to the school. But I thought I can't write about like a teacher getting killed or, another parent. That would just be too depressing for a cozy. So it's someone who works on the staff at the school and she's found on the grounds, but not in the school. So it's like there's that emotional distance,
right?
That you have it as a reader. And I don't, some mysteries are very gritty and very dark.
Right.
In mine aren't. I don't focus on the murder method except to, as how it relates to solving the mystery.
Right, right. So single childless teachers need to beware.
Right. That's right.
Yes. So that raises a great question. How do we as writers decide what kind of character is going to fit with our subgenre of mystery? Because we're thinking about grittiness and reader expectations and reader tolerances really for the dark side of things. And so have you ever struggled to find, you're like, oh, I've got this great setting, I've got this great scenario, but now how can I find the right crime and the right killer person willing, to commit murder to fit within my subgenre and my cast of characters?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend like having like a somebody who swears a lot, like a really rough and tough person be like your main character for a cozy.
Right.
Because cozy readers really don't like that much. Some will, tolerate it or don't mind, but the majority of cozy readers like fairly clean books. So, if I want to do that, I would write a different type of mystery for that character,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Would you have to take on a pseudonym to do that? Or would you just, change the style of the covers so it's branded as not a cozy? Because now you've got 3 series and 16 books. So you probably have a following in the cozy category.
Yeah. I think the experts, would probably recommend like for the algorithms and stuff to use a different name. But then as a writer, like a little independent entrepreneur writer, I just go, different website and different social media.
Yes.
And I just don't want to do that. But it would probably be the way you'd want to go, I would think. That I've also seen authors use, like instead of writing, like my books are Sara Rosett, and I've seen other authors that they write something slightly different, like maybe a romance, and they would use like S.J. Rosett. So the last name is the same, but it should sort because you have a different name. I don't know if it would be any easier, so that's something to think about.
Yes. I don't know enough about Amazon's algorithms to know if how that would shake out, but
yeah, that would take care of it. I think readers now are pretty savvy about, especially if your covers are branded.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is obviously something else, not this series I've been reading.
Right. So how about red herrings? Are there any qualities that we need to think about when we create these false trails for our detectives and our readers, especially for the readers?
Well, I can tell you some of the things I've done kind of to hide stuff.
Right.
Like I've noticed that one thing I do is I'll have, like, the clue is right there, or the red herring is right there, and my character will discount it for some reason. Like the main character will say, oh, that's not important because blah, blah, blah. And she's totally wrong. So having your character write something off will, make your reader think, oh, that's not that important. One thing Agatha Christie uses is like a ton of clues. She puts in so many characters and so many clues that it's like your brain just can't keep up with it all.
Yes.
And I can't, as a writer, I don't try and do that because I think I would just be confused too. So I was trying to think of other red herring ways to mislead. You can do things like where you have a character who seems to be one way, but then at the end you find out they're really not that person. But I think that's only works if you get little glimpses of who their true personality is early or throughout the story, because otherwise at the end the reader's going to go, oh, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, when you revise, to go back, look at how everything was resolved at the end of the book, and then go back and lay in those clues so that the reader can see them, So the stuff you don't really notice when you read it, you can kind of pick up on in hindsight and go, oh, there it was. So in terms of the character, if you're creating that red herring suspect, that person is going to have traits that fit with the crime, and behaviors, or, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or not having an alibi. Those sorts of things will have to play in to your character development to make that person a suspect. So everyone other than the antagonist can't be a nice guy. You're going to have some people in your happy little village or whatever who can be a little creepy or be a little dark or, up to no good somewhere.
Yeah. I try and find secrets that people not necessarily are bad things, like not everybody in the story is going to have like some horrible crime in their background, but I try and find things that people would kind of maybe not be real excited for other people to know about, and it gives them a reason to lie or, not tell the whole truth, So I had one where this person was acting really strange, and you come to find out as you read the story that he's bought a Harley and motorcycle, and his wife doesn't want him to have one, and so he's got it hidden away, in the storage unit because she's forbidden him, and so like people sneaking around and doing things look suspicious until you find out the real reason. So that can be like a false lead. If you can come up with some kind of innocent things that in a certain situation people might not want other people to know about.
Right. I like that. So secrets, everybody needs a secret or two.
Everybody has a secret.
Skeleton in the closet, right. Yeah, yes. That is true. That is true. Excellent. Kathryn, any final questions or thoughts?
No, I think we've covered character pretty well.
Do you? Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good. We have the stamp of approval in that case. Sarah, any final thoughts or comments on character?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome.
I think we've done good.
Great. Well, in that case, we will wrap it up. So this has been Storyworks Roundtable. You can find Sara at sararosett.com, and we will put a link in the show notes. And there is a companion episode. We're talking about mystery plots, so make sure you look for that. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos storyworkspodcast.com.